Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Kaz here. I haven't done one of these review videos in a while. I've kind of been slacking on that, but felt really compelled to do one on Avengers: Age of Ultron. I was able to kind of get to the theaters this weekend and see it. Went in with fairly high expectations, but also questioning, not questioning, but probably expecting they weren't going to get to the level of quality and magic that the first Avengers had. So, I was kind of right about that, but I guess I wasn't expecting as big of a drop off from the first that we got in the second. So, right off the bat, I'll kind of do my spoiler free section and give kind of my basic overview of it. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give this movie probably about a 6 out of 10. And compared to the first Avengers movie, I gave that a perfect score. I felt like there were some plot holes, but at the same time, you were kind of extending your. You were going along with a movie that superheroes existed in, and I didn't need an airtight, plot, but I needed something that was on the same level of believability. And this second movie just didn't deliver that to me at all. It felt really rushed. It really, honestly, felt like there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one, and they were forced to make a decision due to timing more so than them collaborating and coming up with a great idea to kind of fulfill both needs of Whedon, Marvel execs, whoever, the lawyers. I don't know who was in the room for driving some of these decisions. Right out of the bat, the movie is overcrowded. There's way too many characters. The first movie was so well balanced, and everyone had their great screen time where they had their cool scenes to show just how cool and interesting their characters were. And we already had an established villain in Loki, who's established in the Thor movie, and really kind of, I think, stole the show in that movie. And then when he came to Avengers, he was the villain we were all familiar with, and we didn't need to spend as much time on him developing his character, because it's kind of like just watch Thor and then come into Avengers and there you go. With this movie, Ultron was not in any of the existing Marvel movies. He was created here. He was created really fast in this movie too, so small spoiler, it goes from concept to fully realization of Ultron in about 10-15 minutes, maybe that. I mean, it's just kind of bizarre to me how quickly he went from idea or like concept to, hey, he's up and running and he's running the show. Went really, really quickly for me and just felt jarring. But back to the I don't think that's a huge spoiler. I think anyone that's going into the movie, whatever. But yeah, the movie is just the first movie. The first Avengers movie had 5 heroes. Everybody was given their screen time fairly equally, I would say. I think some more than others because of you needed the strong dialogue with some of the characters, but none of the characters felt left out. In this movie, I definitely felt some characters were left out at certain parts. It's kind of like you had so many different heroes by the end scene. It was kind of crazy. I mean, these really aren't spoilers, but in addition to the 5 Avengers from the first movie, Hulk, Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, you're introducing, well, they're not called this in this movie, but the twins, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And then in addition to that, you're also introducing a Vision and a new villain in Ultron. And you have, that's 9 characters right there. I mean, that's a lot for a 3.5-hour movie. Or not even 2.5-hour movie, and I've been reading up online, and I heard that Whedon had a 3.5-hour first cut of the movie, so that's over an hour that they had to cut from his original take on it, and you can definitely feel it in some parts in the movie where it just feels jarring, and you're just not even sure what the hell is going on. It's disappointing. I really went into this movie wanting to enjoy it. Like I wanted it to surprise me and say, like, you know what? Remember that first Avengers movie? Well, you haven't seen anything yet. Check this out. And really just didn't. To me, it didn't live up to that at all. Not even in a shadow of it. So I guess I'll go in. That was kind of rough, small spoiler stuff. I don't want to get in too deep to that. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to kind of get spoiled with some specifics that go on, that was kind of the first section of it. Now this section, I'm going to kind of just go down a list of things, things that I liked from the movie, the specifics. So as I said, I gave it a 6 out of 10. But I'll kind of get into some things that I actually thought that the movie did pretty well. The opening scene. Opening scene is fantastic. It kind of, when the movie first opens, they're in the middle of a battle, and it's a pretty cool battle. They're taking down a Hydra base and everything, and the team is working together. It's kind of like, hey, remember where we were in the last Avengers? Well, here we are. We're picking right up where we left off, and they're using teamwork. They're communicating with one another. The Thor and Cap combo, when there's that one scene where they think they kind of cleared out the base, but then there's a new wave of troops that are coming up over this hill, and Cap and Thor are talking there, and they see him coming up, and Cap just kind of braces his shield like this, and Thor takes the hammer, puts the hammer down, boom, and it's kind of that play off of the first movie when they had the battle with Thor, Cap, and Iron Man in the forest. That wave expands and knocks out all the troops because of the sonic wave. I thought that was a nice nod to the first movie and kind of carrying that over, and they realized they can kind of use that to their advantage, and it was an efficient way for them to kind of keep the base clear, keep the casualties to a minimum, and kind of move on. I felt like the beginning of the movie had a fast, fresh start. It was something where in the first Avengers movie, it took a bit of time to kind of build up. In this one, you're kind of just, you start running. You start running right out of the gate, and I thought that was a nice change of pace for the second movie. And then, the other thing that I felt was done well in the beginning was the banter. I thought that was probably the strongest part. Maybe the banter was pretty cool when everybody was trying to pick up Thor's hammer, but the banter specifically in the beginning of the movie really felt like it echoed from the first Avengers movie, and it felt like a continuation of it. I guess the other thing I enjoyed parts of was when they're kind of at this party, and Thor he has his hammer down on the table, and they're all kind of doing testing each other's strength or will or worthiness of who can pick up Thor's hammer, and they all kind of go around the table and no one's able to pick it up, and it's kind of funny seeing Tony and Brody kind of do the Iron Man gloves trying to lift it up and everything, and no one's able. The only one who's able to actually make it nudge is Cap, and I think if Cap would have continued with it, he would eventually probably been able to get it off the table. But it plays into another. That was actually a nice setup for Vision, but for me, it's I'm going to start going into the things that I didn't like about this movie. But I thought having that scene specifically from the party introduced and remind the audience that, look, Thor's only able to lift this up because he's worthy, and that doesn't just apply to him, that applies to everyone on the team. So the hammer's kind of more or less his lasso of truth, or he's kind of able to judge someone's character pretty quickly based on that. So time to get into some things I didn't like about the movie. I'll remind you again, I feel very strong that it's a 6 out of 10 movie. There were some holes that I was not happy with. The movie in general just felt crowded, and it's kind of echoing back to what I said before. It's too many characters for this type of format of storytelling. I think you hit a sweet spot with the first one where you had 5 characters, and I think once you start to go really beyond that, you really start to limit the amount of storytelling and the quality of storytelling you're able to drive with that many characters, because this is the kind of story where it's a team movie and it's not meant to be someone is the main character. This is meant to be, you're a team, they're all part of the team, they all serve different roles on the team, kind of have to develop the characters together. And we kind of get that in more of a singular movie, like a Batman type movie. You're looking for that character to kind of start off at a different place and end up somewhere else, whether it be physically, mentally, however. In this movie, you kind of really didn't get that from any of the characters in this. And the first Avengers movie, you could almost argue that they really didn't in that either. They more or less just came together. But in this one, it was more or less just them adding people to the team, which I'm not sure this is the best way to do that, especially in a 2.5-hour movie. The other thing that I wasn't crazy about was the villain. The villain for this, and Ultron and James Spader. I love the way James Spader talks. I think he's a great actor. Seen him on the Blacklist a few times, and really enjoyed his performance in that. I don't put the villain not being strong on him. I look at it more as a villain choice. I just don't think he was the smartest choice of a villain for the Avengers to fight in this one. Now, if legal battles weren't something that we had to worry about, I think Doctor Doom would have been a great choice for this, because the end scene could have been around his castle, and kind of having the Avengers kind of try and infiltrate that to stop him from doing some evil whatever. But seeing as how that is owned by Fox at this point, and they are doing that new Fantastic Four movie with him most likely in it, you're probably not going to be able to choose him. I think one of the other ways I probably would have been Skrulls, just for it, even if it's not just an invasion of Skrulls, if you had the Super Skrull, and that would tie in nicely to the whole cosmic universe and alien thing like that. So kind of adds another dimension to that, and maybe they're seeking some of these stones as well to try and beat Thanos to getting all the stones together. But in the process, they send their strongest soldier down, and he's able to absorb each one of their powers, so they're forced to fight someone who is able to kind of have Hulk strength, Captain America's, healing factor agility, the godliness of Thor, Tony Stark's intellect, and yada, yada, yada. And it kind of takes on each one of their personalities as well, and is more or less, kind of a shapeshifter, but here kind of setting the groundwork for a full-scale invasion of a different sort. And I think that I think would have been a bit more interesting, because it would have kind of kept the group smaller. I'm going to skip ahead here for a minute, or maybe back to something. So the other thing that I didn't feel like added a bunch to the movie were the twins, were Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. I think you could have cut them out entirely. I think that their roles in this, I was not a huge fan of either. I just felt like they were there to be new faces, and I think that's a terrible reason to introduce somebody. I felt like I would have rather had screen time taken away from them and devoted more towards Vision, and then what other screen time they had put towards developing the villain for the movie. And I think having that, and that's trimming just 2 characters, so at that point, from the first Avengers movie, you're really only introducing 1 new member, and then one new villain. So Vision was definitely introduced way too late, and I think introducing 3 characters at any point, even if they were established in other movies, I think is terrible. You have to be mindful of how much time you're giving the screen time to each one of your characters, and making sure that you're not, limiting somebody just because of it's a 2.5-hour movie. Ultron, he went from concept to reality way too fast. Again, he just starts off as an idea and is full-scale supervillain in a matter of 5 minutes. Not a great way to tell a story. It's just it needs time to grow, and it needs time for the audience to kind of catch on to what's happening, and it's just not. It was not a strong way to tell the villain story. I felt, in this movie at certain time, this kind of plays into it being crowded. I felt certain times characters really got lost. Especially, in the middle of a battle, you're like, oh, I'm seeing, Cap and Thor doing this thing here, but wait, where's the Hulk? What's happening with that? And then he's kind of off, and he's, doing something, and eventually it comes back to him, and you're like, well, wait, what's Iron Man doing at this time? And it just too many characters to really keep track of. And this is a personal gripe. I haven't heard many other people have a gripe with this, but the Hulkbuster scene was extremely disappointing to me. Being that it was done with mind control, which we've already had kind of in the first movie with Loki, mind controlling the Hulk when he was on the helicarrier, and just not really. It was just it just felt too repetitive. It felt too familiar. It felt like they needed a new way to kind of have the. I'm all for having Tony Stark break out the Hulkbuster and Hulk take it on, but I just don't want it to be mind control. I want it to be them two on opposite sides of something, and Tony just pushes Banner too far, and then Banner just goes full Hulk rage at him, and just he's able, and then Banner or Stark has to resort to using Hulkbuster to just stay alive at that point. And I'll finish with this. I know I'm kind of going a little long here. We're already about 15 minutes, but this was a thing that I discussed with my wife as we walked out of the theater, and it was basically, is this the right format to tell this kind of story? I know the first Avengers movie it's one of my favorite movies of any kind. I think it's a super fun, great movie. It's, probably if not one of the best superhero movie I think I've seen. But is this the right format? I think this story. I think it's an interesting story if it has more time to grow, which is what this is. And I'm really thinking that something along the lines of like a 10-episode series, like whether that's on Netflix or something like that, where it has the movie budget production level, but you're able to extend it instead of whatever this was, like 2.5-hour movie. If you're able to extend that to about 10 hours worth and kind of give each one of the characters you introduced into this series time to grow and time to learn about, time to get to know each one of these characters, rather than having to kind of just have the Cliff Note stories of each one of these characters and just say, okay, we're at the end fight because there's only 10 minutes left in the movie. Here we go. And, it just, I think that would really do a kind of story like this a great benefit. Marvel had, in my opinion, it's super successful with Daredevil and the Netflix series they had, and I think, that was 13, but I think if you did something like did half of that, so maybe you had like 6 or 7. I think even like a mini series that had 6 or 7 with a super high production value, like the movie. I think something like that would help tell the story a lot better, and it would give time for certain things to further develop, and you wouldn't be rushing through feeling certain things. So, all that being said, I'm sticking with my my rating for this movie as a 6 out of 10. I did see online, they're talking about adding another half hour of footage back to this, which could provide more context into some of the scenes that were extremely confusing, talking about the Thor cave scene, some other scenes where you just don't really, it just felt jarring the way they transitioned to one another. So I'm hoping that kind of provides some nice transitions with there, and it'll probably improve my rating some. But I seriously doubt and really don't expect it to kind of hit the same level of quality that the first one had. Being I gave that one a 10 out of 10. Maybe after seeing the extended version or the director's cut, whatever they're calling it, of Avengers, the 3-hour version, maybe then I would actually get this up to. Hopefully, I would love to get it up to a 7 or 8, something like that. So it can at least stand closer to the quality of the first, but. After seeing the theatrical, I will say, yeah, I was extremely disappointed walking out of it, and that was not something I was expecting. So, tune in more. I plan on catching up on some of the things I've been watching lately and some of the books I've been reading. So, take a look at my channel. Thanks for watching.